Today I want to share something with you, but I'm not feeling like showing up in camera because, I'm getting into that cycle of the women's cycle, The period is probably arriving very soon, and so I'm getting into this hermit mode a little bit, not really feeling like showing up on camera. So, but I have something that I want to share that is quite relevant, I feel, and I want to share that with you. So it was Easter, right? And it's a lot about rebirth, right? And resurrection, and it's quite interesting because I ended up having a conversation with my mom that I actually, never had like that before. I knew a few things already about my family, like my grandparents, my great-grandparents, but I didn't know as much as I thought, or I didn't know it all. Like, of course, I'm sure there's much more than I don't know, but these are some key things that make so much sense to what I've been feeling in my body and what I've been feeling like I'm processing, and in my dreams and all of that I don't really know or understand logically why it's happening, but it makes so much sense. So I was gifting a bar session to my mom. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's like a head massage that has like amazing impact in your brain and in your whole system, in your whole body. I can make a video about it another day because it's amazing, but what I want to share is that I was gifting her a session. She was wanting, because she was having some physical ailments, and this helps a lot with that as well. So, and we were talking, and I don't know why. I don't know why in that day it just came to me to ask a few questions about family while I was doing the session. It's quite curious because the access bars, like, it touches many different points in our heads that are related to specific topics, and so our brains save all the information, right? And so when touching certain points where that information is stored, it helps release it and creating new space for new things to show up, and really to process trauma and things from past lives. Like, we don't really need to understand what's happening, but it's just things that are stored in our system, in our brains and in our bodies, that impact our health, our life in general, in all ways, and that we don't really know what they are or why they are there. But talking to my mom during the session was so curious because it just came this question to me. I asked something about I don't remember exactly the question that I made, but it was like for her to tell me something more about her grandparents, my grandparents. I felt there was some connection with the things that my mom was feeling in her body, to something in the past from her family or something like that. It just, I don't know, it was not really, I wasn't really thinking about it, but it just came up to me just to ask it. And she started telling me a lot of things about her side of the family, about my father's side of the family. And I think nothing is by coincidence, because I didn't really ask for those specific things, but what she ended up telling me was things like how the woman she was raised by, because she didn't live with her mom since she was 4 or 5, I think. So she was living with a lady that was taking care of her with her husband. And what she told me, and that she had told me that before, but not as deeply. It's like that lady that I called grandma as well. That lady used to drink. And when she would drink, she would get drunk and would hit my mom. So my mom would run out of the house and run away when she saw that she was drinking. So she couldn't find her and she couldn't hit her, right? But then what would happen is when she would get back home, like the man that was behaving as her father, right, was taking care of her, he would then be him hitting her because she ran away and because they were worried. So she's like, yeah, it was not easy. I would run away from one so I wouldn't get hit by her, but then I would be hit by the other one. And he would also hit his wife because of she getting drunk. So this is part of it. This is my mom's side. And another part of it that I already knew, but I didn't find out really long ago, just like 2 years ago when my grandmother passed. I found out that she used to suffer physical abuse as well in her marriage. So yeah, a lot of this kind of physicality, misbehaving in this side of the family. Then in my father's side, when she started telling me, I already knew a few things. My father also lived with his grandfather until he was 7 or 8, and then he went to live with his parents. But what I didn't know was that my father's grandfather, he used to drink a lot. And when he would get drunk, he would hit his wife. His first wife, my father's grandmother, died earlier. So he had another wife, another woman with him, and he would hit her when he was drunk. And my father was living with him and seeing that. And one time he had actually to put himself in between them, because if not, something really bad would have happened. So it was not piece of cake kind of thing. Then my father went to live with his parents, and my grandmother, my father's mother, so his grandfather that I was talking about was his her father. So yeah, grandfather was my father's mother's dad. She would like to drink here and there, and she would get drunk, and then my grandfather would hit her. So my father also saw and presented that situation of my grandfather hitting her, his wife, my father's mom. So this is like, wow, I didn't know this. At least not in this depth, the depth that she told me about. I knew that sometimes my grandfather would get mad at my grandmother, but I didn't know things got to this point. And so it's quite interesting because my grandmother, she died quite early. I was 8 when she passed, and she had like really big rheumatism, so her bones and all, like her body was really, really weak. And it just got me yesterday when I was digesting this conversation about Easter with my mom, and it just came to me how probably my grandmother's body was just showing the past, like the past trauma from generation to generation that women were suffering. Because if that was happening with my grandparents and my father's grandparents, it's because they came from that environment as well themselves, right? Because it goes from one generation to another generation. And it was so curious. It just came to me that, yeah, her body was probably just showing the trauma that she was holding from all the women that were mistreated before. And she chose probably like to die for it, like to take it with her. And I, like last year, I was like kind of diagnosed that I had some kind of rheumatism, and it was not that little, and I was already feeling few pains, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just from stress, from this, from that. But yeah, I can see, and I'm having lately this pain in my wrist, my right wrist, that usually is that hand that, you know, we use more. And what came to me last night was how that is probably like, because it's the masculine side, how I am like healing the masculine side, like the trauma, because for them to do that, they also came from trauma around that. They experienced that themselves. They saw their parents behaving like that, so that's all they knew. They didn't know any different. And what I feel, it's like my body, this just reminds me of some, you know, the familiar constellations. I'm not sure how to call it in English, but there's a TV series about it as well. How this girl she was a doctor and she needed to do like a surgery, and then from nowhere her hand started shaking and she had to stop doing surgery. She was really worried. She was, because it was her life. And then she had these friends calling her to go to this kind of thing with her, to do this family constellations. She was really skeptical and she didn't want to. She didn't believe in any of that. And then there was this episode when they show how the thing in her hand was showing how in the past, like her grandfather, something like that, or great-grandfather, felt like he had to kill her own sister, because if not, she was gonna be abused and really mistreated, because they were being invaded by like really bad people, like really bad men. And so he was like, her hands were shaking because he didn't want to do it, of course, but he felt like it was the best like that he could do, because he didn't want her to suffer anymore. Not like that, because she was already raped by them. So yeah, they found out in that familiar constellation that happened. And then the shaking in her hand stopped, and she was very curious, and since then she started going deeper into these things. But this to say that it just came to me how much my hand is probably showing the pain and the trauma of these men hitting because it's the masculine side of the body, it's the masculine hand, like the trauma, the pain and the suffering as well that it caused them to do that to their wives. But they didn't know different. They just didn't know what to do. It was something that they learned, right? They didn't know different. They didn't see any different. They grew up like that in that environment. So that's what they learned to do. That's what they knew to do. So yeah, I just had this insight how it's so curious, because my hand has been like hurting quite a bit, and yeah, and probably it's just my ancestors just wanting me to recognize it and to honor them and to send them love and blessings and healing, because they did the best they could with what they had and what they knew and what they experienced. Because now I can see how from generation to generation they did a bit better than the last one. You know, usually they try, right? And in my situation I can see that, but of course I don't know what came before them. But from what my mother was telling me, the generation before was worse, and even comparing to my parents, they both were in those kinds of environments, and thankfully they didn't behave that way towards each other, but physically, which is great, they did something different. But at the same time, there was a lot of emotional instability. So it was not physical, but it was a lot of emotional instability, and it explains why, right? It's clear that they did their best. I wanted to share this with you because this connects so much as well with what I've been processing in the last year and a half in my dreams and all that I shared before. It makes so much sense now. Like, it was not logical in my head. Of course, I had this emotional instability in my home with my parents, but this physical threat that I would feel in my dreams, I didn't really know where that was coming from. So our bodies know what we are processing and why, even if we can't understand it. And our subconscious also know, because it travels down from generation to generation, and if we are not aware of it, we don't allow ourselves to process it. And it's so key to allow ourselves to process these kind of things, so we can really change it and transmute it, and like, okay, this is what it was. Before I would be probably really reactive to that or wanting to repress it, but now I'm like, okay, I see it, I see them, I see their pain, I see probably the pain that caused that kind of behavior, those kinds of behaviors, and now I just want to leave it at that and honor them, and yeah, just acknowledge it and tell them that I see them and I'm not judging them. I accept them for who they are and for who they were, and for me being here, even though I probably didn't agree with many things. But again, if we would be in the same position of the other person and in the same conditions, we would probably do the same, right? So having that compassion and just honoring them and sending love and light, and allow ourselves to process it, and our bodies to process it, and just to let it go. And when we allow ourselves to acknowledge all of that, our bodies are willing and allowed and are able to process it all. So yeah, I hope it can bring some insights to you and just bring lightness. Like, sometimes we, as much as we don't want to look at the dark parts, we really have to look at them, yeah, so we can really transmute them, even if we don't understand it all, just to make peace with it and honor all of it, send love and light, and just let it go and keep moving forward in the best way we can. So sending lots of love to you, and thank you.